Sorry, guys. Got some weirdness going on here. Okay, so here's this one. D&E, is this what's going on? Okay, looks like we're all good. Both streams set up. So, about a year ago, I just kind of dropped this series. People have asked a lot about it, including some patrons. So I thought, maybe I should go ahead and wrap it up. There's a lot of reasons why I kind of dropped it, ranging from the fact that it's kind of, emotionally difficult territory on too many levels, all wrapped up into one sort of period. And also there was some murky legal stuff that not pertaining to me really, but I didn't really want to talk about these things until, it was all settled for the people involved. And it is. And then also last night, I realized that a person that was involved in a situation that I'm going to talk about tonight happens to be the most perfect lyricist for the original music that I would like to make. He has been released from prison. And there's a whole lot of synchronicities that led up to that. So it just felt like, especially because the story is sort of intersecting with reality again, that it just felt like a good time to talk about it. Yeah, if there is ever a good time. So before we get all the way into it, I want to offer the disclaimer that it says no data, and I see 0 viewers, although there are people in the chat, so I'm confused. I want to offer the disclaimer that, of course, I don't support any of these things in theory or practice, at least in terms of like the violence. Also, if you're easily triggered or you have a weak stomach, don't watch this. Better not bring your kids. I'm going to tell a couple of pretty gruesome stories. There's good reason for it, One of the things that I hope to kind of, I don't bring attention to is not really the right thing to say about it, but we lived in a very anarchistic, self-regulating society, basically in Northern California during the Outlaw pot years. And so I'm going to use some of these tales to sort of show some of the pros and cons of that, because it's complicated. It worked in some ways, and as you will see, it had some pretty nasty ramifications in other ways. So also, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. We are still in fundraising mode because the surgeries are, supposed to be scheduled for like 10 days from now. And we have to order the mesh ourselves. That may buy us a little bit more time if it doesn't arrive quickly. And also, I'm trying to pump money into this channel to try to bring it to a wider audience. So all of you that have supported so far, I appreciate you. And those of you that support in the future, also, I appreciate you. All right, so we kind of dropped the tail, I think, right before I left California and went to South America. And so, for those of you that need a little bit of backstory, I guess, I basically, I was raised by outlaws outside of society, pretty much. I grew up without a toilet in my house, bullet holes in the windows, lots of violence all around, neighbors that were inbred and fed gunpowder to their pit bulls, and so in order to escape that, I didn't really see the traditional route of going to college, and just didn't seem viable for me. So at some point, in order to evade the military, I escaped to DC and became a teenage cocaine dealer. And that actually escalated to a level that is kind of shocking looking back. So after that I realized this wasn't good eventually. And I didn't want to go home to Virginia, so I just took off to Colorado. And then I decided that growing weed on a major scale in California would allow me to pay for a band, that I could pay for the musicians and buy good equipment and all of this stuff. So I took off to California, and I actually managed to do that for a while. That brings us, and we're going to skip a whole lot of drama. Partly because I think I already told those tales in the other segments of this series, but I ended up under very strange circumstances with a friend of mine who I just got back into contact with, or at least in contact with his mom, who had a ranch that he was allowed to grow marijuana at, but he had some issues and he couldn't really do it himself. I didn't understand that when I first got involved, but that was definitely the case. And so one night on LSD at 4 in the morning in these shady cabins where they would broker weed deals in Laytonville, which we also called Satanville, which, by the way, is also the hometown of the drummer from Green Day, even though it's a population of about 175 people. That's like their claim to fame, other than all the weed. So, he's brokering weed out of these, they're called the cabins, and there's like just these 10 cabins right at the intersection of the, anyways. If you ever go there and you need 100 pounds of weed, you can probably still get it there. It was wild, though. Like, the guy that pretty much ran it, we suspected was connected to Al-Qaeda. They were Afghanis, and they were scary. Limitless money somehow. It was a shady situation, but he was a cool guy. He still is. And anyways, he shows me this video of this bass player just absolutely destroying shit. And he's like, yeah, that guy will play with us. And I was like, no, I really doubt that, but okay. And I'm not going to get into the story here. If you want to know the story, look up the Skeleton Man on my channel. I've already made a video about it. But basically some really weird stuff was said to me by a stranger that all came true on a level that is mind-boggling. And it was pertaining to starting this band and what would happen with it. And so about a week after, this guy calls me and says all this weird stuff to me, total stranger. The bass player wrecks his car into a river because it had flooded in the Bay Area. And so he needed somewhere to go all of a sudden. He couldn't get to work. His car was destroyed. And so out to the ranch to live with my friend and I. And so we had this band going. And that was really the motivation for me for all of this stuff. That's what I was doing there. That's why I was growing the pot. That was my goal and orientation, right? So not only did we end up with all of the equipment we could possibly need for no reason brought to us by people we didn't ask for, it was a really wild experience, the way things were going. But then some things took a turn for the nightmarish, really. Not really sure what order to deliver all this in. All right, so let's back up to Jesse. And I'm using his real name because you guys can look up this case online, and his name is there. There's no point in not using his name. But I wasn't running it yet. I came the next year to run it. And the drummer had hired these train kids to work for him. And they also went to work for another guy up the hill down the road. And that wasn't a very good guy. He came to a very bad end. I'm not saying he deserved it necessarily, but kind of maybe. He was definitely a junkie, and also he had Ard, this dude's sister. And so they were working for the farm there, these train kids, which is a really bad idea to hire train kids anyways. One of them was named Cain. I'm not even kidding. His actual birth name was Cain. And so they were also working on this other hill for this other guy. And I guess he hadn't paid them, and somebody was down at the bar complaining about it. And this guy, who the dude had done something to his sister, heard it. And he's like, let's go up there. So they were just thinking it was going to be a confrontation. They're going to try to get paid. There was no intent to remove the dude's head, which is what ended up happening. So the only one that had a car was Jesse. Before we get into what happened, let me explain to you why Jesse is important to me. Jesse at first was not a person that I held in super high regard. He knows that. But one day we were at the ranch standing on the porch, and he's like, hey, man, can I spit some lyrics for you? And I was like not really excited about it, but I go ahead, And what came out of his mouth was like to this day some of the most impressive shit I've ever heard in my life. Like Eminem level delivery and Bob Dylan level poetry and just like exactly the theme that I would want. I was completely staggered. Still to this day, I'm blown away by it. So, he had been thinking about this for a while. He knew I had no idea that he had this talent. And, I was I could write music, but I was hit or miss with lyrics, so it was just perfect. It was the only thing we were missing. And then, they decide to go up to this guy's house to confront him about this not paying them and also whatever happened with this guy's sister. And instead of just intimidating him and getting paid, the guy who had the sister just unalived the hell out of him. I mean, I heard the story from his girlfriend, and it was unbelievably bad. Like, she had the baby with her, and like I can't really, I'd almost like to just to really get the point across. And then Jesse, he had 100 pounds or something of weed. And the guy was like, man, we got to take all this. And Jesse drove it and brokered it and then got himself 8 years in prison. So I also just want to clarify, all the people involved were caught immediately, prosecuted. There's no open cases here. I was not involved any more than just having to be on the periphery of this and knowing the people involved, right? So they come down off the hill, and this is where the synchronicities come in. They come down off the hill, and they come to the ranch because that's where they were staying. They had to get their clothes and stuff, And they couldn't not tell us what had happened because they were soaked in blood, all of them. Like, the dude had been running around spraying, like, through his, So particularly Cain, seriously, birth name Cain. Cain and Abel, in case you don't know the Bible, Cain was the killer. Cain comes up and, he's all soaked in blood, and we're just like tripping at band practice, and we're like, what in the fucking hell is this crap? And the whole crew, the whole entire crew of them comes up, all obviously involved, and they're just freaking out, and they have a cooler full of bloody clothes, and they're like, hey man, we need you to just get rid of this for us, to the owner, not to me. And he's like, no, get out of here, leave right now. So the Cain kid is like trying to make excuses, and he's like looking at us the whole time. And he's got this big rucksack because he's a street kid basically, and he's digging through his clothes he's not looking in there though, he's just feeling for a t-shirt, right? So he's already pulled his, evidence-soaked shirt off, and he gets a shirt out, and without looking on it, puts it on, and it's a white T-shirt with the words "killer." And he looks down and sees it and just blanches, and like, it was crazy, man. And so they all took off, and they all got caught like right away. It didn't take any time at all for them to get run down. So let me tie this into the current moment, and then we'll move on to the other story of vigilante justice that I wanted to talk about. And all of this, by the way, is kind of setting up why I decided to leave. I mean, I was not there for this. I went there because I thought it would be a bunch of hippies growing pot, and that you could make money and be free, and it was beautiful and awesome like that until about 1994, I think, or 97, when High Times did an article about Mendo and Humboldt and brought a bunch of attention to it, and the cartels started showing up, and all the dirt bags started coming, and it just, they just ruined it. But anyways, the way this ties into the current moment is about 2 months ago, I just started playing guitar again, like insane hours, to the point where I was feeling guilty about it. Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then I think about the second or third day of this, I played a bunch of Phil Lesh songs, or a couple of Phil Lesh songs, which I never play. And I had an interaction with him many years ago. Most of you probably already heard about. So, I mean, several of them really, but a period of interactions that were very meaningful to me. And I started thinking about that, and I got really emotional. And I woke up the next morning, and I looked at my phone. The first thing I saw was that he had died the night that I was, like, I sensed it for sure. And so I buckled down even harder, and I started studying composition and like practicing a lot more. And I guess the other night I was about to start a stream and I was kind of annoyed because I'm limited to all these like backing tracks. A lot of them I'm not really that thrilled with, and really wanting to do original music again. And I literally had the thought that uh, it's not like you're going to find a backing track for one of these originals that you've written. And I see in my suggested that there's a backing track. I click on it, and it's literally the song that Jesse was writing lyrics for when he got sent to prison, and I was working on the music at the moment when all this stuff happened. And it hit me that he would have gotten out of prison last year. So I was like, holy shit, man. I'm gonna track him down and get back on this project. So yeah, that's kind of the relevance of all of this insanity. Another aspect of this I wanted to get into, I mean, I guess some of the point of these war stories is just the horror value of it. But, where we were in Laytonville, they didn't have cops. There was no local police, So if you had a problem, you handled it yourself. And one of the things that really struck me after being there for a while is that it was almost like prison rules, like if you didn't do anything stupid, if you didn't mess with anybody, if you didn't run your mouth, you're pretty much safe. Nothing was going to happen to you. It got worse and worse, though, because the area between Laytonville and Garberville in Humboldt County, more people go missing there every year than like any other stretch of highway. And like, there's a lot of bad, serial killers come and hide there because it's so easy to live off the grid, to not have a bank account, to, that's where you go or where you used to go if you were an outlaw and you were in trouble, or, so there's that element, right? But for the most part, people didn't really want smoke, they were about that paper, and they just wanted to have fun and get paid and not have to shoot tweakers and stuff, but they wouldn't hesitate to. And it wasn't uncommon for somebody to see a tweaker in their garden and just like in the middle of a conversation, just excuse me for a minute, pick them off, and you don't even go outside to do anything with them. Because there are these giant hogs, these giant feral hogs that will come and just clean it up. And there's nothing left. You might have to go throw some lye or something afterwards to, so it was brutal like that. It was crazy. And if you did cross any lines, the consequences were, like if you stumbled into somebody's garden, particularly like the cartel or something, you were not going to have a chance to apologize. There was no, I'm sorry, it was an accident. Even if it was, it doesn't matter. That's one of the reasons there were so many missing person posters everywhere. Like in Garberville, there's some grandpa from Wisconsin would follow the river too far, not knowing the 6-mile rule. Like you don't go more than 6 miles into the national forest. And then if you do, you're just kind of fair game, And a lot of the guerrilla growers would do wild shit. Like they would hang fishing hooks at eye level, or like 300-400 meters away from their plots, and it was mostly with the intention of getting cops to try good strains. Yeah, I know. Somebody's saying they moved to Humboldt, and like, I'm definitely not trying to say it was all bad. That's kind of the point of this, but definitely my naivety got the better of me because I was not expecting the level of insanity that actually was there, and like the lawlessness is kind of awesome, but it was also like stressful as hell sometimes. What's going on, Levi? So where was I at with this? I'm leading up to a vigilante justice story that's really bad. So if you have, weak stomach, this is your chance to get up out of here. By the way, hit the like button, please. Share, subscribe. Consider becoming a patron or supporting our fundraising efforts. So, shall we just get to it? So what this kind of resulted in is that we had pretty tight-knit communities. People would form cliques, right? In the title, it says Murder Mountain. Murder Mountain is a mountain in Mendocino County, maybe 20 minutes from Laytonville where I lived. And it was self-regulating to an extent, but basically the way it got that name is that like a bunch of rednecks, white trash really, that had no business having money, were just piling up money, piling up money, piling up money, getting strung out on meth. There are videos you can find online where the locals are riding on the street on ATVs with shotguns with masks on, escorting the cops out of the neighborhood. You know, they weren't even trying to stop them or mess with them. You know, we had the upper hand when there were no cops, but then if like the county cops or something came, they were at our mercy basically everywhere. So, anyways, long story short, they just got too much drama in the community. They probably all been up for a week and stuff, and then all of a sudden, guns just started going off. And by the time it was over, in the course of a week or something, half the mountain was dead or something. There's a Netflix documentary about it, and I know everyone involved, unfortunately. So what I was getting at with this anarchy thing, maybe I'm stalling because getting into the actual story is just so it's pretty awful. In a way, the guy deserved it, I think. But I'm making a point here. This is going somewhere, slowly. But okay, so we had to self-regulate. If somebody was a thief, we took care of it. You're not calling the cops. You know what I mean? Like if somebody was dangerous in some way, we had to take care of it. There's no cops to call. You don't call the cops. And that, I had been taught, I was raised that way my whole life anyways, but the thing is, once you become a part of a community that operates like that, you don't have any options left. So again, another story that I had absolutely no involvement in. There was a P3DO in the community, and he touched somebody's kid. And they found out who it was. And the thing is, we were very fair. They were very fair. If there was not absolute proof that you had done something, you weren't going to suffer for it. You might get run out of town if the evidence was overwhelming, but not, what did that critic say about the Book of the Law? Not 100%. But if it was 100%, your ass is in trouble, especially for something like this. So the parents and a couple of other family members went and got the guy, took him, tied him to a chair, poured a vial of LSD into his mouth forcibly. And that's about 100 hits at 100 micrograms, for those of you that don't know. So about 1,000, not 1,000, 10,000 mics. And they beat him and tortured him for, I think, 5 days before he finally died, using various psychoactive compounds to keep him awake. And the thing is, that was pretty early on in my tenure in that county. We didn't have a problem like that again that anyone knew of. So I could give a lot of examples of this, but what I'm getting at is that from what I've seen, and I went to prison too, not for anything bad. It was just a minor drug charge, but it was a felony. And then I wrecked my car into a gas station and violated my probation or something, and so they sent me up for 10 months. And just stupid stuff though. This was also true in there, that you would think in a medium maximum, right on the edge of maximum security prison, you'd have a lot of problems. But the thing is, the consequences were so bad that people generally tend to stay in line. You just don't want the consequences. And living in Laytonville and Humboldt County and whatnot, and seeing the self-regulation, I honestly do think it probably overall worked better than our system of having police and again, I told you guys the story with Jesse and the guy up the hill, but he had done some pretty bad stuff too. It's not like he was an innocent victim or something. I don't know that it levels out. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you guys know what I'm saying, that this sort of self-regulating society, even with these crazy drugged up lunatics, really, heavily armed, way too much money, high all the time, it was more or less equitable justice, I'm going to just leave that at that, and you guys can decide what you think of it. Oh, Alder Point, yeah, man. Alder Point is the shit. One lane road on the side of the cliffs. I know, man. I know Alder Point is awesome, and it's also a great place to pick pan-cyans. Um, and actually, my band, right around this time that all this crap happened, there is a side road out there near Alder Point where your only locals know about it. And if you're not a local, I wouldn't turn down it. Um, but we loaded up a trailer and we put a generator on it and we got our band and like all this equipment, man, because our cliques, a lot of these cliques had a lot of money. Like we went out to that beach and probably blew up $500,000, and every clique is like trying to outspend the other pot clique, so there's like all these cliques with like giant trucks and they're just blowing up money just to show off basically. And we set our band up on the like right at the base of the cliffs on one of the most beautiful beaches in Humboldt County, and ate a bunch of acid, and we were playing on this thing with the Humboldt Ocean. It was just absolutely incredible, and we owned it. I mean, we didn't, but like it's not like the cops are going to come and tell you like stop it, you know. Um, yeah, wild times, man. But here's where things get worse, I guess. All fun and games until it's not. And so basically, the year after the trimmers cut off the neighbor's head, uh, I didn't really know that the farm, there was more involvement, I guess, than I realized. And I thought everyone's been arrested. So I wasn't really thinking that there was going to be any kind of heat on the property because of this. Little did I know. So, my buddy tells me, hey, man, you need to come out here and run this grow. I know you know what you're doing. And it was a good opportunity for me to make money. And so I got all my paperwork in order, got a loan from a buddy to cover all the dirt and stuff, and went out there and, planted. And for a while, everything was great. And then the owner of the owner of the property, actually, his parents are are one of the big canning companies, big fruit canning companies. And he had like 7 of these giant farms, and he was just such a fuck up that he lost like all, but this was the last one, the last remaining farm. But they still were rich as hell and owned all this property in Marin. It was really, really kind of sad. He was hilarious, like the funniest person I've ever known in my life. And, genuinely a nice guy, kind of creepy, but a nice guy. And it was great because he would pass out so hard. My band could practice right outside of his bedroom door until 5 in the morning. And, he didn't care because he was that blacked out. But then one day he got drunk and he told me that his name had come up in court during the murder trial and everything, and slowly it started leaking out that maybe there was more involvement than, and I've got 100 pounds of weed hanging in the house. I'm responsible for the workers, you know what I mean? This is basically my band that I've hired so I could take care of them while we were practicing 60 hours a week. And I'm realizing like we might have some serious, serious problems because we had our paperwork in order. But if there's something like that, else something extra going on, all they have to do, because it's only state legal, all they have to do, the local cops, is bring the feds with them. And then you're done, then it's bad. And at our size, you have people growing 10,000 plants all around you, massive gardens. I'm growing 99. I'm not worried. You're not that worried about it. Literally 10,000. The cartel was, if you look at, I don't know if it's still like this, but back then, if you looked at, what is it, Google, where you can look at shit from space, Google Maps or whatever it is. I don't think I've ever used it. But I've seen the pictures, it's just pot it's like forever, and a lot of it is every cartel you can imagine. The Mexican cartel is there, the Russian cartel is there. They used to say that the Russians would kill you just to see if their gun worked, like they were the scariest. But there were like weird, obscure Eastern European mafias, and I mean, it got really out of control. So, a couple of other things happened. That year, the county government got the nasty-ass idea because Monsanto and Philip Morris were trying to take over the pot market because they knew they were about to legalize. And they got the idea to spray these mites that we weren't used to dealing with. And they said they were trying to get rid of an invasive thistle. Sure you were. Sure you were. I never saw that thistle once, I don't think, in Mendocino County. First of all, I don't remember ever seeing that fucking thistle anywhere. And so I think they're called russet mites. I don't remember. There was spider mites. I think it was russet mites. And whatever kind of mite they were systemic. So they would get into the plant and they were inside of it. And I'd never even heard of them. So my plants, I noticed when they were small, they started like wilting and turning yellow, and it looked like nitrogen deficiency. So I started trying to straighten out the pH, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? You know, I'm adding more high nitrogen fertilizer, and they're still yellowing and shit. And I'm just like, oh, what the hell is happening? You know, so I thought I kind of fought it back, and I planted them, and plants started like, they would get like beautiful and big, and then they just suddenly die. You know, just out of nowhere, or the bud quality would start like collapsing, and I'm just going, man, what the fuck is happening? And then finally, the drummer who ran the property before was like, oh yeah, we had russet mites pretty bad, but I thought we got rid of it. And I'm like, dude, you knew about this and you didn't tell me before I even planted? Like, this is when I started to figure out that my drummer partner was a little bit like. So that was sad as hell. The russet mites almost completely crushed us. So that really took a lot of wind out of my sails as well. And then the legalization dropped the price of cannabis from like $1,500 a pound to like $500. And I had already committed to paying my ex-girlfriend. You know, I broke up with her, but I felt bad for her because she was nuts and she was a single mom. So I had already agreed to hire her for $200 a pound to trim the whole crop, you know, her and like one other girl. And, you know, now we're getting $550, $600 a pound, and I'm paying the trimmer $200 a pound, and I've paid for all this shit and all of the food for the entire, you know, it was a rough break. I still managed to come out kind of ahead, right? So it kind of culminated with, we had this big show with Jay Lane, who is now playing with Dead and Company. And we had been told that this would happen by some random stranger, which is odd, but no time for that. Now, like I said, the Skeleton Man video, if you want to hear that story, you can look it up. Yeah, how much are pounds there now? I haven't been there in a while. I heard they went back up. And then, yeah, the Bulgarian Mafia. That's exactly right. That's what I was trying to think of. They were scary as hell, too. There was a bunch of Bulgarian Mafia. And I remember hearing about that. You know, I could tell. I think I went into a gas station or something. There were these shady dudes, you know, and they were all bald. And I was like, what language was that? You know, who were? It was like, that was the Bulgarian Mafia, man. Whoever I was with knew. But yep, totally Bulgarian Mafia, all up in the hills. Anyways, so we're almost to how I ended up in South America, I guess. So we had this big show with Jay Lane, and it kind of was a chaostrophe. My bass player's bass blew up, and we were kind of fighting, and I had the flu, and there was way too much blow, and it was it was like a dream turned to nightmare, but still okay, you know, I don't know. And then I guess right around that time, my mom, who I hadn't spoken to in 8 years, just called me out of nowhere, and she was being hella weird, like, you know, if anything happens to me and your stepfather kind of stuff, and I'm like, something's not right about this, you know. She's like, yeah, you should probably come down here to Ecuador because there's all this gold and silver buried, and I got to show you where it is in case anything happens to us. And it's like, what the hell, you know? And in case you don't follow me, my mom was not right. You know, she had narcissistic personality disorder, severe depression. She was severely abused as a child, although I don't even know if I believe it at this point, now that I've sort of dug into like who she really was, and enough maturity has allowed me to kind of analyze, you know, things. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. She's no longer with us, as we will soon discover the reason. So she calls me and says all this weird stuff, and I had already managed to get ahead a little bit. I had a little pile of money, and I thought, well, you know, it's not going to hurt anything to just go to Ecuador. Little did I know, in a way, it was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. In terms of like continuing to pursue this music career, we had a lot of stuff going on. It was not my intention to bail out of that. I just wanted to step out of the stress and the murders, all around in the hills. And, you never feel really safe there. It's always possible that the feds are going to kick down the door. It's always possible some crazy tweaker is going to come, or a group of them, or you know what I mean? Like, there's always tension in the air. Like, you can never let your guard down completely. And I was getting tired of that. So I thought, yeah, go to Ecuador, drink some ayahuasca, pull myself the rest of the way together, and kind of shake off all of this bad vibes that have been accumulating. Because something I failed to mention, I guess, is that once the price of pot collapsed, the communities did too. And that was their plan. That was why they sprayed the russet mites. And they were trying to take out the mom and pop growers, right? And so another liberal failure, all the liberals in California were like, hell yeah, legalization, let everybody out of jail, which they have not done. And, well, I think they did let some people out of jail. But at the time, they hadn't done that as a response to... So they have done that to an extent, but they hadn't yet. That's fair. So the liberals were like, hell yeah, they're going to put zoning laws on all these pot farms, and we're going to make it all safe, and it's going to be really, truly legal and shit. And no, their plan was to make sure that the mom and pop growers were destroyed, that you couldn't afford to do it unless you were already rich or a corporation. It was totally a trap, and I knew it. Honestly, anyone that knows me then will tell you that as soon as they made it like recreational legal, and I realized that they'd set it up so corporations could come in, I was like, watch, the New World Order is going to fall into place. This is the first major signal. What they're really doing is getting control of the final outlaw stronghold in the United States. And the reality is that from like just north of San Francisco all the way up to like Central Oregon on the coast or something, and then inland, to Sacramento, Reddington, I think it's called. I mean, it's like the size of Europe almost, or something. I don't know if that's true, but it's huge area that was like nobody had a regular job in 3 generations or something. You know what I mean? Like, these people had, some of them, lots of them, millions and millions of dollars, and it was like buried in the backyard. I actually watched a guy dig up on $500,000 one time, and it was all moldy. And he's like, and he just dug a different hole up. And he's like, oh shit, it must have been a hole pop. And he didn't even care. He's like 22. And that, it's pretty normal there. So that's what they were trying to snuff. They didn't like it that people like me could go there and just like live off the grid, off the radar, and maybe fund some band that was going to be a huge pain in their ass politically later or whatever. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of reasons they didn't like it. So they were really trying to stomp out the mom and pop growers, and they succeeded. I felt like it wasn't going to be viable for me after losing half my crop to russet mites, the price plummeting, and then also having to take the risk, of potential prosecution, of getting robbed. And I keep almost getting to this point, but it got more and more dangerous, because as the money stopped falling from the sky like rain, people started, a lot of my friends that were super cool, level-headed, when the money stopped flowing, they started selling cocaine, they started getting involved in guns and stuff. Everything just went to hell. Legalization just made the place an absolute fucking hellhole and ruined paradise. Still kind of makes me sick to think about, because it really was amazing, especially the first few years that I was there. You could work a little bit and live really well, and you didn't have a boss. It was beautiful. Sometimes when I didn't have like pot work, I would just pick gourmet mushrooms, and you could make plenty of money doing that. Just walk around the woods and picking boletes and chanterelles and stuff all day. I mean, it was, and in the redwoods, just incredibly gorgeous. Psilocybin mushrooms grow all over the coast. Like, is remarkable. The energy of the magic is tremendous in that area, especially in the redwoods. I lived in the redwoods, even in a tiny little cabin. Almost died one night. And before we go on to the rest of the nightmare, I'll tell you guys this story because it's pretty ridiculous. I was actually going mushroom picking one time, and I had my X5, and I just parked it on the shoulder on the road out to the coast, and I climbed up to the top of the ridge, and I found like a ocean of black trumpet mushrooms. I was like, wow, amazing. I'd never seen so many before, so I started picking them. And I guess I got around to the backside of the huckleberry bushes before I didn't realize it. So when it started getting dark, I was like, oh no, I got to get down, and I went the wrong way. I just did not notice that I got on the wrong side of the bushes. And so I hit this logging road, this old logging road, and I realized it was pitch black. I didn't have a flashlight or anything. I had a lighter that was dying. It died, my last light. So while I was picking mushrooms, I heard a mountain lion. Sounded like a cub, and but I knew it couldn't be any other animal, you know? And so I was freezing my ass off, and I thought, I need to warm somehow. So I found these really, really tall grasses, like 11-foot tall grasses with these like bunches of seed flower kind of, just mess. And I packed my clothes with that, and it was full of ticks. And I got ticks all over me, which that sucked. And it itched. And I'm laying in the grass, and I hear something moving. I went inside the grass to try to get warm because it was windy. And I hear something walking around the grass, and I realize that mountain lion, that mama mountain lion, wants to know what I'm doing here. Nothing happened. It just walked around the circle of the grass like over and over again, and kind of making like aggravated like sounds. Like I could tell it kind of couldn't decide whether it should kill me or ignore me, or so next morning I wake up and I walk down the logging road thinking it's going to hit the highway eventually, right? And it doesn't. I end up in this like giant creek, and there's a sign that says, the highway is this far down this way, but it was broken and it was laying on the ground. So I wasn't really sure which way the arrow was pointing, and there were like 3 ways you could go. And so I picked one. It was obviously wrong. I walked the entire, whatever it said, 4 miles or something, and realized the arrow was not pointing this way. So I'm going back, and I'm like drinking out of it. There were big leaves, and I was drinking out of the leaves and like chewing pine needles to try to get some energy. And I'm walking back, and I see one of my boot prints has a mountain lion paw print in it. And I'm like, oh, that's great. That's fucking great. That cat's tracking me. Mountain lion print in my boot print, right, that I had just made like an hour or less, So I realized the cat is, still at least paying attention to me because it's got cubs, kittens, whatever the hell you call it, baby cubs, I think. And so I go up to the top of the mountain and sleep again, and I'm cold as hell, and now it's been 2 days. I'm probably getting a little bit of hypothermia. And then the third night, I found like where a redwood had fallen over. So there was a big old cavity in the ground, and I had taken some survival courses from Tom Brown Jr. when I was in high school, so I kind of know how to do stuff out there. So I put some bows across the top and covered it with debris and made a little debris hut. So I was a lot warmer the last night. And then I get up and I see a giant hedgehog mushroom. And hedgehogs are very, very delicious gourmet mushrooms if you cook them. I did not know this. I didn't know they had to be cooked. So I grabbed this. I can't remember what they're called, but there's a giant version. They're the only mushroom in the world that has spikes that stick down instead of gills or tubes, like boletes. And I hadn't had any water, so I squeezed it into my mouth, and it's like this burning, almost like hot peppers. Like I maced myself down my throat. Apparently, when you cook them, it cooks whatever that is out. It's not poisonous, but man, did that suck. And there were black trumpets everywhere. I had huge bags of them, so they were not edible uncooked, and my lighter, it lit once, and then it was done. So I think on like the 4th day or something, I heard a truck go, "Bah," and I was like, oh my God, that's the highway. And it turned out that I was like just right on the other side of a ridge from the highway the entire time, and it would have been really easy to get out. And I just somehow I got so disoriented. Yeah. So I realize the highway is there, and I go to jump over the ridge, and I'm like, okay, but I could be anywhere on Highway 20 right now. And I jump down, and I'm right in front of my Beamer, and I'm like, oh my god. And I'd barely slept. I'd fallen a couple times. I was all beat up, and I remembered I kept a little 100 milligram pill of morphine in my first aid kit, and I got that morphine and chewed it up. And then I realized I had no money on me, and then I was like, wait a minute, I can go back up. So actually, before going to the hospital, I went back up the hill, picked a bunch of black trumpets so I could go sell them and go buy a meal. And then I went to the hospital, and I had like sticks sticking out of my hair everywhere, and I was fine. They said I wasn't even that dehydrated because I had been like drinking out of leaves and stuff the whole time. And so then listen to this shit though. This is where it gets ridiculous. I had just gotten over pneumonia that almost killed me when that happened, right? So that was another issue. Like I was like, oh my God, I still like a little bit pneumonia, So that almost killed me. Then I got stuck in the forest for 4 days, and then I go home, and the first night I'm sleeping in my bed. I shit you not, sleeping, and it's this little cabin, and there's a glass like sunroof thing, just like one panel, and we were in the redwoods, and they're tall, right? And the branches are called widowmakers when they fall because they'll kill you. And so I'm laying in bed, and I hear this kablam, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I wake up, and there's glass all over my face, and I'm soaking wet, and I'm like, I feel over to the window, and the window's still there, and I'm totally confused. Like, okay, if the window's there, how is there glass all over me, and why am I wet? And I turn on the lamp, and there's like a 20-foot widowmaker stabbed right through, like touching the bed, and I'm right on the edge. Like it missed me by like, it would have gone right through me. If that, there's one right there. That's why I keep pointing up there. Yeah, man, it was just crazy. It was like that movie, Final Destination, like for like 10 days, like the universe was just acting like it wanted to kill me. So I guess I took a hint. And yeah, my mom contacted me, and I went to Ecuador, and I was supposed to come right back. And I met my partner there. And that's a crazy story, and I know a lot of people that watch these streams follow me and probably have heard these things, so I'm not really sure if I should tell the story again. But I also, one of the main reasons that I went down there is that I had been studying ayahuasca and other plant medicine on the book level since I was 12 or something, really. And I had taken everything else under the sun, DMT and, mushrooms and mescaline and peyote and, everything, but not ayahuasca. And when I was in, I don't know, 9th grade or so, I remember talking to people about it, and not once did I mention it, and anyone knew what the hell I was talking about. It never occurred to me that you could just fly to South America and just drink it. That I don't know why I never thought of that, but and I didn't have a lot of contact with, socially. I've always kind of stuck to myself, so it's not like I would talk to people or get on the internet or something and find out about that. So I ended up also meeting the person that ended up being a teacher, and I drank ayahuasca with him a few times, and then I walked into a coffee shop one day, and I saw this blonde girl that was much younger, and I thought she was very beautiful, and but not, I didn't have any agenda because it just was not where my head was at. And that ayahuasca narrator said, she will have your babies. And I was like, yeah, right. And I just ordered a sandwich and ate it and left. And I thought, I'll probably never see her again. That was just a voice in my head. And the next day, I was at a bar playing music. And I went outside, and I looked, and she was sitting beside me. And I was like, what the hell? She didn't say anything to me. She was just there again. And I said a couple words to her, but she didn't really seem to want to talk to me. So I was just kind of like, right. So then the next day, I went to there were a couple of DJs at some hostel, and I went there, and then I was sitting on the steps listening to the DJs, and then she was there again. You know, I was like, what the hell? How does this keep happening? And then some like sleazy dude came, you know, some like Colombian guy or something, spoke English, nice like Rolex watch on and stuff, pretty scary kind of dude. And he was really harassing her, you know. So I was like, bro, you need to back the fuck off. Like, and I'm thinking, this is great. I'm about to get shot in South America, like my first time out of the country, and I'm gonna just get myself shot. And he did back off. It turned out he was a relatively nice guy, despite his associations, and he actually apologized to both of us later, so that was fine. But anyways, yeah, like I went walking around, and she just was there, but she didn't really seem to want to talk to me, so I just was confused. And long story short, eventually we did end up, you know, obviously together before I left South America the first time, and she came with me. And before this is all done, we're going to end up living with Bob Dylan's ex-wife and all sorts of just ridiculous craziness. I mean, I said this was going to be the last episode, but I'm realizing we're an hour in, and there's all this other weirdness I haven't talked about. So, pounds for $300. Yeah, see, that's just crazy, man. I don't even understand how you would do that. See, the thing is, though, I'm not a very commercially oriented person, obviously, you know, in case you can't tell. Um, but, you know, it's true, I'm not. And I grew organic and only the best strains. I didn't really care about the yield so much. I mean, I kind of did the last year I was really trying to make, but I would not bend my organic standards. And so that meant my soil cost, you know, we grew in 1,000-gallon pots, you know, smart pots. And so the soil alone for, what was it, like $12 a bag? And it took like 100 bags or some shit to fill one of those pots. And, you know, I would also use that Humboldt's Finest or whatever. I can't remember what it was. There was one with frogs on it. And there was another one that was blue with like fish. And it was so good. Ocean's Harvest or something. That one was the best. You know, and in the amendments I would use, I had this like super dark black soil from the Matanuska Valley in Alaska. That is like the richest shit on earth. And then I would use like large perlite, which was more expensive, and, you know, just all the best only organic ingredients. I feed them molasses towards the end, to, you know, and bud hardener and stuff. The only time I ever really cheated a little bit is that I did use some not organic bud hardener that was just so good. And it's so little, you know, it's just a couple of drops in like 10 gallons or something. And so I did fudge that. But even to kill the russet mites, you know, I was only organic, and that meant I was spending an incredible amount of money to kill those. So I couldn't do that. I could not sell $300 pounds. Even if I grew 12-pound plants, I still could not sell $300 pounds. I would lose money. So that's another reason that I, you know. Anyways, where are we at with all this? So yeah, I stayed down there for like 6 weeks or something. It was only supposed to be 1 or 2 at first. And, oh yeah, I almost missed something kind of significant. So about the third time that I went to, no. It was 3 nights in the jungle, but it would have been like the 6th time, I guess, that I went to drink ayahuasca with the shaman. I was his house was in Vilcabamba in the town, and he would have ceremonies in his teepees in his backyard. But he also had a house that he would use in the jungle, and I'd never been to the jungle before, and I've loved the Amazon since I was, you know, tiny kid. So I just mentioned, man, I'd really love to go to the jungle, but my mom was telling me all this stupid shit about how you had to all have a lot of money to go there, and you couldn't just go there, and none of that's true. You can just go to the jungle. You can go to the jungle and just like ask a Quechua person, like, is there a trail around? And they'll be like, yeah, right over. You know what I mean? It's not like that at all. I don't know. She was just discouraging me because she was afraid I would do something dumb, or I don't know what the hell. But anyways, I just mentioned I'd really love to go to the jungle, and he's like, I will take you to the jungle. And I was like, whoa, really? So, and for any of you that don't know, like I was brought up like so dirt poor white trash that I had poverty trauma, and I still didn't understand that I could do stuff like that. It was my first time out of the country. I had to get a passport to go. I'd never had a passport before. I just, the thought that I could actually just go to the jungle did something in my brain, like that this poverty was not limiting me in the way, like I wasn't even poor anymore. You know what I mean? I was used to like driving around with 10 grand in my pocket at this point, you know what I mean? But somehow the mentality, that programming is still so deeply etched in there that I just still thought that I couldn't do things even if I knew I had the money or something, it's hard to explain because it's not rational, it's not logical. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, and consider joining our Patreon where you get access to all sorts of premium material, and also I do consultations and tutoring in all sorts of different subjects. And because we are trying to raise money right now, I'm also offering discounts on 6 months and 1 year memberships. So we appreciate all of our patrons and supporters. It's been a long couple of months. But anyways, where was I at with this? Okay, so the guy agrees to take me to the jungle. So I go to the jungle, and it was really wild working with this guy. Like, first I get on the bus, and I sit down next to him, and I was thinking about the fact that this voice in my head after the first ayahuasca ceremony said that the girl will have my babies. I didn't even know her name. I just thought of her as the German girl, right? That's important because that's going to come up in a minute. And so the shaman sits down beside me on the bus, and he goes, I'm literally just finished this thought, right? It's just like, I wonder if it could possibly be true that, she'll have my babies. Like, it just seems stupid. And the shaman goes, the first time I saw my partner, I thought, she will have my babies. And I was like, what? And I know about telepamine and telepathine, like I've read all of the anthropological reports or I had read of telepathy and precognition and all this stuff, but we hadn't drank it yet, that day. And it occurred to me immediately that after you have consumed it enough, your filters are down to the point where you're just picking stuff up on the regular. And it's true. I don't care what anybody says. I know it's true. And you're going to be knowing it too if you take what I'm about to tell you at face value if you haven't heard it before. So we go out to the jungle, and the first night, I think it was, I was sitting on the deck, and it was towards the end of the experience, and I thought I should ask the German girl to tea because it's like not as, it's like chill. And I open my eyes and I look over, and the shaman's sitting there, and he goes, ask the German girl to tea, but by the river. I didn't even know he was there, you know what I mean? I definitely didn't say anything out loud. And so at that point, I was like, okay, this is definitely a real thing that's happening here. Lots of stuff like that happened. I don't know. I went there with him several times, so I'm not really sure which instances in a lot of cases are part of which trip, the sequence. But there was a lot of it. There was a time when he handed out Mapacho cigars at this waterfall we would go to everyone but me. And then I had this really difficult experience, and I went out into the jungle alone to kind of think about it. And then I turned around, and that Mapacho cigar he didn't give me at the waterfall, he was handing me. Because he only had one for everyone, and somehow he knew I was going to need a hell of a lot more later. And it actually ended up kind of saving my life that night, but we're getting off the subject here. So anyways, all this stuff like that happens. And as I'm leaving to go home, I had not told him much. He knew that I had like a bad relationship with my mom, but not really because I told him things. One of the first times I drank with him, he came in and he sat beside me, and he's like, Harley, I have been sitting outside discussing your situation with spirit, and your mother is why you have had this chronic fatigue syndrome your entire life. And that's probably true. The research that I've done after the effect It was wild. So he knew something, and as I was leaving, he said, "When you get home, go directly to the yurt. Do not interact with your mom, and say everything that you need to say to her to the smoke. Light some incense and say it to the smoke." I did not listen. I did not listen, and so, 3 days in the jungle, I'm tired as hell. I get home, and my mom and my stepfather are tripping on some bad research chemical that was supposed to be LSD, and it wasn't. And so she was kind of weird, and I'd never seen her tripping before. Like, it was just out of left field. Like, and my stepfather was totally jovial and, just like, and so I didn't go straight to the yurt because my stepfather's like, "Hey, how was it? We're tripping, derp, derp." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Let's put on some Dead and chill." And my mom comes out in like her like most toxic, like loony, like, and all hell breaks loose within like 30 minutes. She's doing everything she can to provoke, like, because that's what they do. They got to make you the bad guy. They want to be victimized. You know what I mean? And it just. And I did lose it. And I said all the shit to her that I should have said to the smoke, just as he predicted that I would. And the next time I saw her, she was in a glass box because she had unalived herself by hanging. So I stayed in Ecuador for a couple more weeks after that. Enrique actually was at my mom's funeral, which is weird to think about. She never met her, but yeah, and her first three ceremonies actually with ayahuasca, I had not. My teacher had not done three in a row the entire time I was there. I was about to leave, and I said to Enrique, what you really need is to have 3 nights in a row to start. I think me too. That would be good for me too. And then I get a message from the shaman like the next day, and he's like, "Hey, this weekend I'm doing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night." It was kind of a shit show too. It was the first time that he had been like really overbooked, and I'd never seen him do that before. The one of the shamans that came to assist got overwhelmed, drank too much medicine, and he was like curled up on the ground making these, I called it jaguar barfing. It was a terrifying sound, and it was freaking Enrique out. At one point, I went to go bring him water and kind of put him back together, which is crazy. And that's how I ended up as an apprentice, because the shaman noticed, like, what the hell, this guy's drank 4 times and he's drinking more than anyone else, and he's taking care of shamans and shit like this. This isn't normal. Anyways, at one point, because of the noises this guy was making, and Enrica was balled up on the ground, and there was so much medicine in me. She looked like just this pile of shape-shifting, multicolored, just like sobbing, and I just stood there and stared at her, because I didn't know what to do. I wasn't even sure if it was her. Her hair kept changing colors, so I was like, is it blonde, red, brown? Like, is this even her? And I didn't want to touch her because I didn't even know her that well. And then the shaman's like girlfriend comes out and looks at me like, "You asshole, what are you doing just standing here? Like, do something." And like, I paid to be here, you guys forget that because I just help. And anyways, pretty hilarious. He never did that again. It was never overbooked like that again. But yeah, he learned his lesson. He learned his lesson. So anyways, Enrique and I were totally plutonic all this time. We drank Bobensana with, ayahuasca with Bobensana at one point, and I had the first experience of unconditional love in my entire life. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that my mother was actually so damaged that in a way she didn't even love me. I was more of like a possession or something, like a, not like a boyfriend exactly, like a boyfriend without the attraction or something. It really was just like about control and jealousy and like domination. And, it was not maternal love. Like, I'd never experienced that. I really didn't. And I'm not saying she was all bad. She had a big heart and she would help people in her community a lot and stuff. It wasn't like she was evil, but she was just so fucked up that the last thing you wanted was to be her firstborn son. Just honestly. And I mean, she had been threatening that I would drive her to off herself since I was like 5. And then eventually we get in this big fight, and she's like, aha, I can throw the ultimate guilt ball on him. Really, that's what happened. It's wild, man. Uh, by the way, a bit of unsolicited advice. If you know anybody that toxic, just cut them out of your life. My brother did. My mom, that, way, and so did I. And then she called me saying all this weird stuff, and I just kind of, you know, fell for it, I guess. And it derailed my entire life. Like I was on the verge of maybe realizing my dreams and stuff, and it's like she sensed it, and she's like, oh no, we can't have that shit, you know, really. So anyways, I stayed for a while, and then Enrica and I kind of realized that we had some kind of connection, but we didn't even kiss or anything, and I left. And we stayed in touch for a few months, and it was crazy that we were basically committed. We hadn't even kissed, and weird stuff started happening. Like I was thinking, I bet she thinks marriage is stupid, and my phone beeps, and she's all, I might be thinking differently about marriage all of a sudden, and literally that's how it happened, and this happened like regularly. So I knew this is that the ayahuasca was telling the truth. It's like this, it's true. And our son, the first time I saw her, that ayahuasca narrator, Pachamama creature, whatever you want to call her, uh, she will have your babies. Our son is 5 and 3 months or something. Right, meow. And supposedly, according to ayahuasca, she's my mother. And I'll explain that real quick. So, if you follow like the hermetic stuff, this idea of like as above, so below, that there's like one operating system that everything basically follows. So, you can think of it kind of like Fibonacci, is lying behind all kinds of stuff, but not just universes and hands, whatever, all seashells, but also weather systems, time patterns, financial stuff, you know what I mean? Like it's the same pattern lying behind everything. Well, souls are also like that. So you think in like the beginning of time, there was a one single thing, just like in the beginning of evolution, it was one single cell, and then it divided, right? So that also happened on a micro level to everyone. That's what twin flames or soulmates or what that really is that, on an energetic level, each monad was one, just as the original nothing was one that divided into two. And then on another level, and this is just, according to ayahuasca, it's like you have a atom, and you have a nucleus, and you have protons, neutrons, electrons, whatever, spinning all around. And that's like your mom, your sister, your closest friends. They're like these little clusters that people call soul families. And so what actually happened is that after she died, I went back out to the jungle one more time to drink ayahuasca again. And I thought it was going to be really hard. And the first night I drank, and it was easy. And I was like, man, I really got off the hook. And then the next night, Enrica and I were laying on the deck together. And, oh, Jesus, no, man. Sorry, guys. That was after we came back from the United States. I can't skip ahead that far. I guess I will now that I started the story. But anyways, so we're laying there on the deck, and so there's like these spirit beings around me, and I could see them more clearly than I ever had before. And they're doing this weird slow dance they're always doing, and suddenly they all turn into demons, and there's like flames, and my mom comes down out of the sky, but she's all skeletal, and she has blue flames coming out of her eyes. And I was taught that you're never supposed to curl up into the fetal position when you're drinking ayahuasca. And this finally was too much for me. I curled up into the fetal position. I was freezing cold inside. And I was trying to get Enrica to comfort me or say something. And she wouldn't. And I was like, what is her deal? It was making me feel so much worse, Like she didn't like me all of a sudden or something on top of this experience. And so later I asked her, and she's like, oh, no, I was freezing cold, and there was just skeletons all around us and just death and everything. I didn't say a word to her about what was happening. I did try to snuggle up to her, but I didn't I didn't tell her about my mom and everything. So what I gathered from my mom coming down is that you're not supposed to unalive yourself, not because it's some god is going to judge you for it and send you to hell, but because you get stuck that way. So, it was kind of a bitch to have this, like, I'm trying to, like, find some peace here. And, the ayahuasca is like, no, she's stuck like this for longer because if you get on the plane of consciousness, pure energy, whatever, it's much harder to pull yourself together. And then when you come back, you're right where you were. It's not like a way out. It doesn't do anything. You're still, you're in the same exact place, but now it's harder to pull yourself together. I was like, oh, that's great. So after the vision fades a little bit, I go down into the jungle, and this was the time I was referring to earlier when the shaman didn't give me a mapacho at the waterfall. And I go out in the jungle and I'm trying to like process this. And I turn around and I just see this mapacho cigar in my face. And God, there's a lot to this. And I kind of talk to him about it. And I go through this long process out in the jungle after he leaves. Kind of got some instructions from him. And then I'm walking back to the house, right? And at first I see this giant stick insect. And when I looked at it, it was like, and then froze, and it was so cool looking. But then as I was looking at it, I hear Pachamama in my head say, I have something to tell you. And I was like, what? And she said, your mom did not go into the stars. And I was like, what do you mean? And she says, she went into Enrica's womb. And I was like, don't tell me that shit. Come on, lady. Like, there's got to be limits here. And she said, no, it's the way it always is. What I described about how the atom, the nucleus, and the particles orbiting it are all the same people all the time, the same monads in a little cluster. And so it's always like that. A few days later, we found out she was pregnant. And there's a lot more to that, actually. Like, we had like a yopo ceremony at one point, and my mom apparently possessed one of the. I mean, that's how it came off. Like, he didn't speak any English. I didn't speak German, and yet Enrica does speak German. So he started like asking me stuff like, "What happened with you and your mom?" And I started telling him, and I guess no one was thinking about the fact that like we weren't speaking each other's languages and totally understood each other. And later, Enrica was able to verify both sides of the conversation because she spoke both languages. She also said she didn't notice that there were two languages being spoken either. And he was taking on characteristics of my mom. He was acting like her. Like, I mean, he knew all kinds of shit he shouldn't know. And this was like right before. And also I would get like really awkward, during intimate moments. And it's, I'm 36 years old at the time. Like, this is why. And now I'm halfway convinced it's because my mom was like trailing around behind me. And like I knew she was in the room. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced of any of this, but that's retrospectively, that's really how it all looks. Do not order Datura tincture online. If you want my advice. Well, I appreciate you as well. Transdimensional. Yes, it has been quite a life, and it's not over. It's still ridiculous, pretty regularly. If you haven't seen the earlier episodes, too, man, I mean, it was a lot crazier. One of the reasons that I hesitated to continue the series, I kind of got sick of people trolling me and saying like, "Yeah, right" in the comments and stuff, and I understand that reaction. I really do. Because even if one of these things had happened to someone, it's like, but for the consistency of it, and I have my explanations. I guess I kind of think I know why and how, and but what I was saying is the earlier episodes, or even if you haven't seen the earlier stuff, like when I was in DC and whatnot. At one point, I was like indirectly connected to Diddy. Like I know all kinds of things about him that people don't know, not because of like hanging out with him, but because the guy that was kind of the leader of our crew went to Howard University with him, and also they were both from New York, and they were still friends when I was working with him, and like twice he was like at my front door with him, just all kinds of shit like that. Like the drummer from Nirvana when I was like 8 or something would sometimes be crashed out at my dad's house. We lived in Fairfax County. Go look it up. That's where he's from. His mom was my English teacher. Like, just all these like just completely absurd fucking things. And I didn't even know. None of us knew this until Kurt Cobain had already unalived himself, and we were watching the Unplugged performance, and my dad goes, "Is that drummer's name Dave?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Dave Grohl?" And I was like, "How the fuck do you know that?" And he goes, "Don't you remember nicely beating the shit out of him in our front yard?" Which is a true story. I'm not going to repeat it again here. But you know what I mean? Like, there's just... It makes me dizzy, like, thinking about my own life sometimes, really, And there's, like, these distinct chapters, like the cocaine, DC, like, lunacy there. And then I kind of went up into the mountains in Colorado to think and pull myself together and heal a bit. I think I went up to, you go up high to get perspective, basically. And then the Phoenix process, weirdness happened there. I ended up involved with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and just all this insanity. And then out to California and then into the Amazon, and it's just like everywhere I've gone, it's like an episode of Stranger Things or something. And I don't mind. I'm not complaining, I mean, to me, that's what life is about, just to try to have the most novel and interesting experiences you can and to be able to understand them from as many different perspectives as possible. And, that's what it's about. So I couldn't have really done it any other way if I was more homogenized, I guess, There's no way that I could have pulled this off. It was necessary that I was kind of just like in this really weird position, of being born outside of society and kind of maintaining that until the present day. Another thing that bears elucidation, I guess, is that I did kind of try to merge more into normal society at one point. So much worse than Outlaws. Like, you can trust people less. They talk behind your back more. They're disingenuine, like, way more. Like, I felt so much more emotionally beaten up and, like, uncertain. And, like, it really surprised me. I was like, wow, I always suspected this. But muggles are actually way more awful than outlaws. And I'm not talking about criminals exactly. I mean, I hope you guys understand what I mean when I say outlaw. These stories and whatnot that I've told, I don't know if you noticed, but like no really harmless people. There's no harm. You know what I mean? You don't do that. Like, and it's kind of like the mafia. I've never really held it against them that they killed each other all the time. Because you sign up for that, like, these are the rules. This is a hazard. I don't even really think they should be prosecuted as long as they keep it within their thing, I mean, if that's what you're doing, everybody's agreed to it, whatever, That's more extreme than what I'm talking about, like NorCal self-regulating communities and stuff, but yeah, there's, you don't hurt innocent people. And you don't even, go robbing people and stuff, even if they're other outlaws, generally. Everyone tries to be noble and on the up and up. And the thing is, if somebody does something to you, you can't go to a credit agency or something. It's, anyways, kind of lost my train of thought. I can't remember where we're at in the story or whether I should continue with this. Let's see how many... Yeah, if you're all in the game, then that's just what it is, Yeah, I do miss California sometimes, and I really, like, right now, part of my objective is to get my paper in order again. So I can go and take another stab. I'm still in touch with my bass player and the drummer. Really, I still have connections to Jay Lane and people like that. So if I recorded something and really had the right players involved, I actually kind of can pull strings and make something maybe happen with it. And I guess I didn't explain this part. Well, we didn't get there yet. I don't want to start another episode here, so I guess we just have to. What time is it? 9:52. Damn, I'm on the fence about this. Getting into all the rest of this. What do you guys think? I don't know. How many people do we have? Have you reached gnosis? Gnosis is not something you reach. It's not an end goal. It's a process, So it's kind of an awkward question to ask somebody to talk about, like, what degree of illumination do you think you have? And I'm not busting your balls, but that's like really something that you have to decide for what you think about that. I can't really talk about it, but by what metric? Like, do the rules of reality seem to bend to kind of conform to my at least needs in a way that's weird? For sure. I don't think I would have a channel like this if I didn't have some proclivity for navigating the metaphysical or whatever. So that's all I have to say about that. So let's get back into our story, because I would like to get, I think, this done. So where were we at? My mom had unalived herself, and the night that Enrica and I finally kind of hooked up, we didn't kiss or anything, but we realized there was something happening, and it was very intense, So, man, I missed a lot of things. I was going to talk about how the Boba and Sauna led to the first experience of unconditional love, and missed that, but whatever. Maybe I'll write a book and it'll be more detailed than these ramblings. But so we were laying in bed, at least like looking at each other and realizing what was happening. And I hadn't told her yet that my stepfather was coming at 5:30 in the morning to take me to the airport. And I almost jumped out of the pickup truck like 50 times, because I was only going back there really because I didn't want my mom. I knew my brother wouldn't come to her funeral, and I didn't really want to go either. But I didn't want none of her kids to be at her funeral. Just seemed too cold. And so I went back to the States, and my roommates, my band, my partners, whatever, I told them we had this one kind of crackhead friend that is the guy that hooked us up with Jay Lane and the reason we ended up doing that show. So he wasn't all bad, but he was a crackhead, and I told them, while I'm gone, do not front him a bunch of pounds. But without me there, without the boss there, and there wasn't a lot of other business, and he was paying like 3 times as much as we could get locally, they did it anyways. Of course, we never saw a dime. So I'm thinking I'm coming back to California with, $60K waiting for me. And then there's like 4. And I'm like, no. What do I do now, right? So this is just crazy, man. While I was gone, my ex, who I hadn't broken up with yet, had hooked up with this woman from this Pot family. Her father was known as Black Bart, and there was a reason for that. He was a PhD in something from Harvard. Evil genius would be a good way to describe it. Completely deranged narcissist. I knew all of his kids. They grew up around the Grateful Dead a lot, actually. Like when they did the Chinese New Year, they would have this dragon and the kids would be in there every year. And, like the hog farm was right behind our house. I mean, they were our neighbors. So, we'd go there and talk to the old timers, and they were deeply involved with them as well. And anyways, Black Bart the kids would tell me stories about, they'd wake up and they'd go out in the living room and there's like still naked adults like piled up all over the floor everywhere. They all tried, snow by the time they were like 11 or something, and it's just insane. But he was rich as hell too. He was one of the biggest pot farmers in NorCal, and so he gave them all pot farms when they became of age or whatever. And so I one of my drummers was a sister. Had a sister. They were part of this family. And when I got back from Ecuador, the sister I hadn't met yet contacted me, and she's like, "Hey, I have this like a ton of pounds. Can you move them?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "All right, well, can I just drop them off here?" And it took up my whole living room. I was like, "All right." And then the next day, without even calling me, my friend who had given me the loan the prior year, that called and threatened me. It blew my mind before I was even late. Like I thought he was like one of my closest friends. I thought it blew my mind that he did that, but I guess he felt bad. And he didn't even call first. He's just, I see this truck. I see his truck come beaming straight because it's a big glass front of the house, and there's the road and then the yard, right? And he's like driving straight at my sliding glass doors, and I know who it is, and I'm thinking, oh shit, what did I do? I'm thinking he's gonna shoot me or something. Like, what the fuck? And he pulls up and stops and jumps out, and he's like, "Hey, I need 100 pack," and I was like, "I got an 88." So that helped, I was I was only back in town for 2 days. Seriously, that's what happened. Like I get there, this lady, I'm like, "Oh, I have no money." This lady dumps all this pot in the front living room, basically, that I don't even know. She just trusts me on reputation, which is how things are there, which is crazy because you do build like a credit card. Like if you've been around for 5 or 6 years and you have never ripped anyone off, then you have credit with everyone. People just know. And so it wasn't that random. Still, and for dude to just show up with the cash the next morning, it was just mind-boggling. So I'm still in touch with Enrica, and she decides she's coming to the States to see me. And this lady, Black Bart's daughter, had hired me basically to grow on one of her properties. She had a bunch of properties, and it was beautiful and perfect. I woke up one morning, went out to make coffee, and there's a bear on the front porch, and middle of nowhere, gorgeous Northern California, beautiful house even, and it's like, man, my luck is just not real. Like what in the hell? I think I still had my Yukon Denali. I sold the Beamer because I needed that money, and I missed that X5 though, man. It was so beautiful to drive that car around. Take like a light hit of LSD and drive through the redwoods at 75 miles an hour. It was just like flying. Where was I at with this craziness though? All right, so but then things started to get weird. Like I came home one day and it was a boulder someone had dragged into the middle of the road, and I hit it and like messed my truck up a little bit. And then I started to notice there were like booby traps like in front of the shed where all these nails, like it looked like obviously tweakers had set up these booby traps. And then I needed plants. So I was driving by the neighbor's house and they had a bunch of pot plants in the front yard, obviously trying to get rid of them. So I pulled in and they're like, "How much do you know about," I can't remember her name, this woman. And I was like, "Well, she's my drummer's sister, one of my drummer's sisters. And I know about Bart and stuff." And he's like, "Dude, she's not paid her shit to make the place legal, and they're after them. The cops are after them, and she's not going to do it. And they told her if she doesn't get her permits, they're gonna raid." So she was setting me up basically because she thought there was an off chance they might not get around to raiding the property. And so then I was like, okay, there had to be a catch. And problem was Enrica was landing the next day. So, she might have even already been on the plane. And I'm like, this isn't good. This is not good. So she gets there, and then this woman, like, comes, and I'm like, you got to legalize this. Like, I'd noticed she was stalling, and so she like turned on us, and she's like, okay, well, you got to go then, and I didn't really know what to do. She was there for 3 months, and suddenly I don't have this income, I don't have this situation. I had a little stack of money though, so I was like, "You ever heard of the Grateful Dead?" So we ate some acid and went out to my truck and listened to like a Dark Star from 1974 or something, and she was blown away. I was like, "Well, we can go on the road with Dead and Company." So we started following Dead and Company around for the summer, and check back in with the chat and make sure that we're all good. So I got to go backwards in time. That BMW I was talking about, I had broken up with this girl, and we were living together, but she had a kid. I wasn't trying to take the house, so I had a van. No, the van broke. That was the problem. So the sister of the woman that I was working for back then told me, "Oh, well, there's this guy I know that has a dealership. They'll give you a car, a loan, even if you don't have, because I didn't have a bank account, no address, no credit history. I haven't had a lease or a utility in my name since I was 17 or 18 or something. Still to this day, and so I was like, what? I didn't get it. And I go down there, and they're all Mexican. The place is shady looking as hell. And there's this Jeep that I had money for in my pocket, but I really like the X5. And the guy's like, okay, we'll give you a loan. And I was like, what? And I don't have a bank account. I don't have an address. Like, don't worry about it. You only pay us. And then it kind of hit me like, these guys are cartel. And I don't know why they were so confident they'd be able to track me down, but I guess maybe the cartel has that kind of presence in Northern California, and that's what they were saying. So I took the car and a loan and gave them what I had in my pocket, and then I lost my other job. My friend, the guy that pulled up in the front yard and bought all the weed, I was supposed to make a bunch of hash for him, and it was going to make a lot of money. And but then his girlfriend talked some shit or something. He got mad at me, and it wasn't even true, but he got mad at me, so I'm like, okay, shit. And they gave me like a week to come up with another grand because I didn't even have the full deposit for this X5. So I have my guitar, my amp, and this Beamer, and I go down to Haight Ashbury, and I was thinking like I was gonna go busk, and I thought maybe somebody from that time period, the Summer of Love or whatever, will still be living there, and they will do something to help me. So the other side of my head is like, this just completely stupid. And also you're an idiot. But so I go out to Haight Ashbury and set my stuff up, and there's nobody out there. It's a dumb way to try to make $1,000 fast anyways. Partly I think I just wanted to get away from Mendo for a night or two. And I see this like big tall Gandalf looking hippie walk by, and I think there was like $1.25 in my guitar case or something, and like maybe 15 minutes later, I was just about to strum my guitar like really hard in frustration, and I had the thought, where am I going to get $1,000 from by tomorrow afternoon or whatever? And there's $1,000 in my face at that moment, and I'm like, somebody shot me in the head or something, and I'm dead, and I'm just, just a like. And he goes, can I buy 15 minutes of your time? And I was like, what the hell, man? Sure. And he's like, well, come to my apartment. So I go to his apartment, and he tells me that he knows Bob Dylan's ex-wife, Ruth Tyrengel, and that she needs a guitarist for an album she's making, and he thought I would be perfect for it. And he had been living in that apartment since 1974, right? So someone from that era maybe will help me. And he gives me exactly the amount of money that I needed, plus a bunch of other things that were, I could turn into money. And so... I was just done stupid, but I wasn't really sure how seriously to take him because it was just weird, So I agreed to it. He's like, yeah, you can have the money as a down payment, and just, you owe us 4 hours of studio time or whatever. And so I go pay for the rest of the down payment and whatnot, and I ended up talking to Ruth one time over the next like 5 years or something, and like nothing came of it. I didn't even look her up to see like if this is real and true. I thought if they call me and they want me to do this for this money, I'll do it. You know what I mean? But I didn't really care that much about it because I just didn't think. I don't know. I didn't get the significance of it or something. And so Enrica and I are going around with Dead and Company, following them around, and we're in LA, and all the hotels are full, like forever. And it just got so late. I was like, man, what the hell? And I thought, let's call Bruce and see if Ruth will let us crash her house, because I'm pretty sure she lives in Topanga Canyon. And I sent him a message, and we got a message back saying, here's an address and see you tomorrow. And so we parked the truck in the ghetto, and there were just literally like gunshots all night everywhere, loud, and like some of them were semi-auto, and it was not cool. And but we were fine. We got up and drove the rest of the way to her house, and it was true. It was real. And when we got there, I actually looked her up, and she was in Bob Dylan's movie. I don't remember the name of it, but it's supposed to be the worst movie ever made, according to most people. I think it's like 4 hours long, and there's just like nothing happens or something. And she's in that movie, and she's also in a lot of his songs and stuff. And I was like huge into the Dead and Dylan when I was in my early 20s, and particularly the song Memphis Blues. I would drive around in the Shenandoah Valley like just singing along at the top of my lungs to Stuck Inside of Memphis. And the characters in those songs were like Romeo and Juliet to me, to a Shakespeare fan or something. I mean, this guy got the Beatles high for the first time. He was a huge inspiration to people like Jerry Garcia and Leonard Cohen, and this was his wife of 18 years, and Ruthie in the song Memphis Blues. And I was literally sitting on the floor playing her acoustic guitar. Actually, supposedly the acoustic guitar that Dylan wrote, One More Cup of Coffee for the Road. Not rated by playing, but literally flipped it over and wrote on the back the lyrics. And I got to the line, if you see Ruthie, and I just choked on Ruth, and I was like looking at her, all eyes bug. It like really sunk in, I was like, holy shit. And she saw what happened, and she's like, yeah. And she reached behind or beside the couch, and she had a bunch of vinyl, and she pulled this picture out, and it was a caricature of her face, obviously, like definitely her face, and it had Dylan's signature. It was on the back of one of his albums. He drew like a caricature of her face, and I think it's Long Way Home, or I don't remember which album, but that's when it really hit me, like, holy fucking crap. And of course, Enrica didn't really she's much younger than me, so she only vaguely was aware of who Bob Dylan is. Now, all these years later, she's kind of looking back and going like, holy shit, man. Like, I had no idea what was going on around me at that time, Really, really wild stuff. It didn't end well, though, because, my mom had just unalived herself and everything was going wrong, and and she was kind of crazy. Like, she kept saying that, her and Dylan were going to hook back up and stuff, and there was no way that's happening. And, it was just weird. And she was rich for so long. She lost all her money because of her kind of scummy son, I think, getting him out of legal trouble and stuff. And yeah, she had me like driving her around, like driving Miss Daisy in this like broke down old car. The windows didn't roll up or down, and the air conditioning didn't work. It's LA, it's super hot. And she really just expected us to like, serve her, because she was nice, but it was kind of definitely insane, definitely fully fucking insane. So we followed fish for a minute, and I was like, all right, well, we can't just do this forever, obviously. I mean, it was fun to travel around, like, new couple doing all this weird stuff, but like, what, should I go back to California? This woman we called Mindo Mary, because she pretty much ran like Laytonville. She was dangerous for sure, but really cool. Another one of those like outlaw contradictions, man. But she was like, you could tell her presence, like you would not fuck with her. But she could be really, if she liked you, then it was a really good thing for you, and she liked me. So she found me a job, working for somebody else that she knew, and if she endorsed this person, I knew that it was good. Like if seriously, if she had gotten me this job and they had screwed me over, like they would be afraid for their lives. Even if she was closer to them, like if they double crossed me and she gave the recommendation that they'd be surrounded by rednecks with weapons quick. And so I knew it was cool, and I was like, you can stay. They said, if you want to come with me and help grow the plants and you get paid and everything. And but I wasn't really sure because I kind of wanted to get out of the life, that was not what I signed up for in the first place. I didn't want all the crazy violence and stuff. I just wanted to like pay for my music, and have an actual chance of getting somewhere, which generally takes money. And, I was sick of it kind of. And she's like, well, why don't we go to my sister's house in Breckenridge? And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm a 36-year-old outlaw that's just like run out of options, and I'm gonna go with my new 25-year-old girlfriend to her family's apartment and be trapped in there with them. Like it didn't sound good. But somehow she talked me into it, and I started a Shopify store, and it started to actually get sales. And then I was like, well, let's just go back to Ecuador, I guess. I own property there, so I can be a resident. And, what the hell, man? And so we went down there, and then Shopify, almost as soon as we landed, my Shopify store, it was all psychedelic and like organic stuff. And it hit the top 25% of traffic for that week for Shopify stores, which would have been a shit ton of money. And as soon as the traffic started, before there was a single sale somehow, or maybe there were sales and they blocked them all, I don't know. But I got a notice that said that, and then just like a instant later, like I didn't notice at first. I went downstairs to tell Enrique, look at this shit, and then I looked again, and I was like, oh, there's another message, and I opened it, and they're like, your shit has been frozen, like it's not a go. And I was like, what the hell? So I called them, and they're like, I don't know. It could be because you're from you were using a foreign, whatever address. And I was like, but that's the whole point of this. You're supposed to be able to do it from anywhere in the world. And you're telling me shut me down for just because I was like overseas, like, and he just made excuses and they wouldn't do anything. And I realize now I'd put a bunch of money into it. I probably could have sued them if I had, common person sense. But I've been an outlaw my whole life. Like I don't think like that. I just thought, well, they're holding the reins, so now I got nothing. Again, I think I had like $600 to my name or something, and the guys in California still did have money to send me a little bit here and there for a little while, so that helped. And then I just kept working with the shaman for years and years, and eventually ended up in the jungle. I started this YouTube channel all right about the time the Shopify store, and it got monetized almost right away, and then demonetized almost right away. We had like a rape business that we started, but then the COVID shut down the Ecuadorian post office, so the shipping from private companies was too much to make the business viable now. So it's like I just kept, tripping and stumbling and then landing on my feet again, and like, like almost just like making up something new on the fly. Well, not really making it up on the fly, but because luckily I had been studying, mysticism and plant medicine and using psychedelics and engaging in ritual magic practices, and even joining, the Freemasons and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and all this. So I had plenty to draw on, but yeah, sort of long story short. And before it was over, I worked with Shuar, Shipibo, Kofan, Quechua, medicine traditions. I've lived in several different locations in the Ecuadorian rainforest, the Peruvian rainforest, Iquitos, Pucallpa, Tena, Ecuador, Vilcabamba, Ecuador, the beach in Ecuador, Montanita, crazy town. Cocaine is almost free, and it's everywhere, like everywhere. The town is just like basically a pile of cocaine and alcohol which isn't the greatest thing. Like they don't sleep really; it's always loud. But it was wild just to see, because the police don't mess with anybody. Also, the ecstasy, whatever, everything, and it's not fake. Nothing's ever fake. It's all real. You don't ever get tainted anything, and you don't get ripped off. People are super cool. It was weird. We lived there for just a couple of months. It was just too loud, and we're not really into the partying. Dipped our toes in that, but that was enough for us. Yep, Sacred Valley. That's more or less the story. I mean, when I think about how much crazy shit came out of my mouth, telling the story, and then I think about how much I didn't say, it's pretty mind-boggling. And it's no wonder that I'm tired a lot these days. No, I don't worship Crowley. It's just dumb. No, Crowley didn't want to be worshipped. I don't worship anything. I don't believe in worshiping things. I don't really even believe in the objective existence of spirits in that sense. But no, you don't relegate your sovereignty to something else. We are sovereign, from my point of view. The Shuar who I learned ayahuasca from and in their tradition through my first teacher, for example, you don't prostrate yourself on the ground when you pray. You sit up and you have respect for yourself, and you don't send your prayers off to some sky god. You direct your attention directly at the thing that you wish to influence. Magic. Crowley said, "I would hate and despise followers. Every man must cut his own path through the jungle." So I reference Crowley a lot because he left a very well-articulated representation of what the gnosis is and why it's important. But it's not about emulating him. In fact, a lot of people criticize him because there's elements of darkness, pretty thick sometimes. And, they said, aren't you a black magician, and isn't that a bad influence? And he said, you're missing the point entirely. Even if I am a black magician, that's my true will. Your true will could be anything, and it's your job to find that out. You don't imitate me. You're not trying to have my true will. It's your own true will. Find your own identity and constrain your life to function in conformity with that. That is it. That is all. Let's see if anybody else has any questions or comments or subjects that. Are you living in Sacred Valley currently? Yeah. Have I ever felt attacked by an entity? No, I don't really believe in that exactly. No, I'm not wanted by law enforcement in the States. No, not in the least. I've actually checked just to make sure that, I had a warrant scan or whatever. No, I'm not. Plus, I wasn't like that, really. I mean, it's not like I was out. The stories I told, I really wasn't involved with directly. I just was on the peripheral of them. It wasn't my thing. I've always been kind of too smart to go overboard and really get, and I'm not greedy. So I wasn't willing to take. I wish I had been willing to take slightly bigger risks, because I realize now that I have a kind of a bubble that I think would have facilitated that. Could be wrong, but I think so. And so I wish I had been ballsier a little bit, but not anymore immoral or anything. I always had a certain system of ethics that I wouldn't violate, and that kind of limits your, bandwidth of behavior, I guess. I saw another question. I already forgot what it was, though. Oh, about entities. So the thing about entities is that, in my experience, just from observation, everyone that I've ever seen talking about having energetic attachments and entities is just somebody that is doing spiritual bypassing and doesn't want to deal with their shit and is trying to blame it on influences they can't control. That's all it is. If there were demonic creatures trying to influence our behavior and destroy us all the time, you would not have a good night's sleep in your entire life. You know, like some of these like new agey kind of ideas, I feel like if you just think it through just a tiny bit, they just crumble to dust, and it's a good thing because they're extremely damaging beliefs. You know, and people will say like, "Well, I've seen a shaman extract during ayahuasca." Yeah, sure, me too. But you're on ayahuasca, and you know what the guy's doing. It doesn't mean anything. And I'm not saying you can't draw energy out of people. That's not true, you know. But there are limits to this stuff. And karmic cleansing, this is like a big thing people are charging money for. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. No one can cleanse your karma. If you have karma, you have to work it out. It's math. You can't, you know what I mean? It has to be real. There has to be a process. Something has to be engaged, in order for there to be a result. You don't just have somebody wiggle their fingers around and beat you with plants and spray stuff on you and then your karma's better. And I'm not ridiculing shamanism at all because, I know that these techniques can have effects, but the limits to those effects are often exaggerated pretty severely, and since the profit motive has entered into shamanism and all this kind of stuff, you see an awful lot of really bad ideas that are clearly engineered to sell people things they want to believe, So you just really think about it. If the world was crawling with invisible, higher dimensional evil beings that wanted to destroy humanity, we would be fucking gone, It's silly. If you understand the universe in terms of reality, which is that every bit of energy is balanced by its opposite. So there's a positive particle, there's a negative anticorollary particle that is of the exact same mass and whatever, And so if the photon hits its antiparticle that's exactly the same, it leaves behind nothing but a couple of photons, It's perfectly balanced. That's why there's a perfect balance of good and evil in the world. It has to be that way. It's the way the universe is structured. You do not need to invoke evil spirits and shit to explain it. You just don't, It's just a matter of balance. That's it. It's that simple, And I think people are really drawn to the kind of new agey comic book versions of reality because it makes life more, I don't know, it's like an escape or something. But that's not what real spirituality is. Spirituality is about being here and now, seeing what is for what it is, and not projecting beliefs onto it and not making stuff up to explain things that have obvious answers, It's a subject that hits kind of deeply home for me because it's really aggravating, to have religion be such an evil, horrific influence on humanity. And then when we start to try to generate something to replace it other than abject materialism, you have all these people driven by profit motive creating all these terrible ideas and selling them to people because they're, marketable. And it's not helping anything. In fact, it's probably made things a lot worse generally, just like new age spirituality in general. And one of the other problems is that if you really want to be a shaman, if you really want to be a magician, if you really want to be anything, it takes a lot of tedious work and it takes a lot of intellectual work. And that's one of the things also that I think pop culture ideas have kind of derailed. That, you have to forget about your intuition and you can't use critical thinking to understand things of the spirit. No, yes, you can. Yes, you can, and you have to. Otherwise, you just end up lost in the abyss, That anti-intellectual attitude, I think, has landed us with just a bunch of, muddle-headed mystics that are just driven by profit motive. And, the plant medicine scene to me is mostly just a bunch of people that are exactly like all the yuppies in the offices, except that they're more narcissistic maybe and, think that they're better than their office workers because they no longer have to do that because they're out scamming people, selling them fucking karmic cleansing and shit, I mean, this is not what we were after. And I'm not saying there aren't people that are exceptions to that, but profit motive and cultural toxicity, really taking the wind out of our sails in a lot of ways in terms of being a productive movements of genuinely illuminated people. That's not generally what I see when I look out. When I go into PSOC and I interact with plant medicine people and stuff, I'm just discouraged and don't feel like socializing ever again, usually, you know. So, I'm not trying to be a downer, but, you know, that's just my experience. And it's not the fault of the medicines. It's partly just a matter of putting the cart before the horse, you know. Um, Before you take ayahuasca, traditionally, you go through a lot of training. It's not meant to be drank by the whole tribe. It just isn't. You know, so you have these people that have none of that training. They have little in the way of critical thinking skills. They're not super grounded, you know. They were a fucking real estate agent in Venice Beach last year. You know, never taken acid before. Never been in a fight. Like, you know what I mean? And now they've been wrestling with this nth dimensional demon in the jungle for, you know, 2 weeks straight without any real preparation, and they think they're God now. You know, I mean, this is not how things are supposed to be done. You know, at first I kind of regretted that I didn't get ayahuasca younger because I might have avoided a lot of trouble. And that's probably true. At the same time, I'm really glad that I was in that world, you know, and I was able to gather knowledge and common sense and wisdom and experience before taking that step in there. Because I think in way too many cases, that's not how it happens. You know, they want your money. And the reality is, before you ever drink ayahuasca in a tribal situation, like the Shuar, for example, you would be given tobacco, drink it, drink, you know, liquid tobacco juice at 8 years old at the waterfall for 3 days, fasting, drinking tobacco until you acquire something like a magical power. I'm not going to say the name. And then when you're 12 or so, you're given datura or toe. It's brumanzia now. It's been reclassified, but basically datura, you know. And then maybe if you're one of the smartest and most like morally upright, reliable, hardworking of the kids, you might be chosen to eventually drink anathema or natim, depending on whether it's ashwar or shwar. You know, you're not just like some kid that just decides he's gonna take his year off from college and go to South America and drink a bunch of you know what I mean? That's not right. It's not how this is supposed to go. So that was probably more of an answer to your question than you were looking for, but oh, I definitely prefer 5-MeO at this point in my life. All right, we're getting a lot of questions, so I'll do my best. He asked, "Do I consider myself a shaman, a master healer, or whatever?" I don't really think about that. I mean, if you mean technically, are there, you know, maestros of various lineages that I've worked with in South America that the entire community refers to me as maestro? Yes. So, I mean, that's you know, in that sense, I guess you don't get more credentialed than that exactly. But I don't really think about it that way. You know, I don't know what I am in those terms. I don't know why my life has been so filled with weird. I do kind of. I mean, I don't know what the. I know the energetic thing. I know what is going on in my mind that links me to that stuff. You know, but I don't exactly know why. I don't know what to call it or what to think about it, and I don't really worry about it. You know, what I worry about is that for whatever reason, whatever psychological issues a person has when they come to me, I know what they are. I know where they came from. I can tell them all about their parents. Talk to any of my clients. Some of them have, reviews that we've posted videos. I just know. Like I read people just like the entire script of your being. It's like, and it takes about a split second, and I know. I can tell body language kind of. If you've been molested, like, and not even necessarily from studying it intensively. I just know. I know. I don't even need to meet you. If we just talk a little bit, I'll know what's up with you instantly, almost, and then I know how to address that. I know where to look. I know that I have a lot more synchronicities and precognitions than normal people. And when it comes to plants and healing, that's also kind of not me exactly. Like in one case, I had a guy that came here with epilepsy, and I just knew that Ajo de Monte was going to help him. And I went to one of the neighbors who was a Quechua shaman, and I asked him, what plant do you give for seizures? And he said, Ajo de Monte. I gave it to him. He never had another seizure until he started using meth again a year later or something. But, the seizures stopped. In a lot of cases, I just know, like, what I was saying, though, is the medicine tells you, too, like, I had a client here from Australia that had not had visions, and he'd been there for a month, and it was really, he wasn't, like, mad. It's not like the medicine wasn't working. He was vomiting, and he was obviously getting better, in a lot of ways, so it's not like it was at a loss, but it was obnoxious for me that he didn't get to see this. It's incredible, the DMT realm. And so the very last night, we were waiting, and he vomited a lot. Nothing really happened. And then the medicine just told me, go get some ortiga roja and give him a cleansing with it, which actually means sting him with it. And so I go out in the jungle and get some ortiga roja, and you have to like skin to make a handle so you can grab it because it has spines all over it. And usually it's just used for like bone health. And they just use a little piece and kind of slap it around on your arms and stuff. But I grabbed a whole big old bush and asked him to take his shirt off and gave him the cleansing with it. And he went and sat down, and I thought, well, it's been 5.5 hours, nothing's gonna happen. I went in the kitchen and got a snack, ate a plantain or something, and I come back out, and he's sprawled out by the fire and not even on his mat. And I was like, what the hell? And he's like, oh, the visions, they're finally, the visions are, so I guess I don't know if that really answers the question, except to say, like, I know that this stuff happens, and I know that it consistently is correct, but I don't really know what to call it or what to think of it, And to me, in a way, even shaman is too much of a limiting term and I don't necessarily think like a shaman in the indigenous sense, I don't have really a specific tradition unless I'm working with a specific medicine that I was taught a certain way, because then you have to, the Shuar way is what I was taught, and out of respect for that lineage, the protocol fits that. And then when the ceremony starts, the spirits are real, everything's real. I treat it, I shift my ontological model. But in a normal waking state, I don't necessarily think like that entirely. It's related but different. And that's what I was told to do too. The teacher always said, like, do not watch the hands of your master. You must find your own way, find your own songs. I only know a couple of the songs that he used because I was encouraged really not to. And that's traditionally how it was. This whole thing of like everyone imitating the pop culture idea of what an ayahuasquero is supposed to be, that's not right. Every shaman was supposed to be his own thing and have his own songs. This thing of Icaros getting passed around, some tribes did do that, but they did not preserve them note for note. Like I've seen white people like arguing, like, no, this little, this little tiny flare here, and no, no. Any Shipibo that I've known, and this was Shipibo Ikaros, different every time. They're different every time. Never are they repeated once. So how are you supposed to learn them exactly? There is no exact, you know? So even what people are claiming to do to try to respect and honor tradition supposedly is against tradition and it is dishonoring it. You know, this is one of the reasons that like I'm sort of more and more isolated, really, because like everywhere I look, I just see things going awry, you know, and I can only do so much. My thoughts on sigil magic. The people that are tuning in to hear the outlaw stories are too late, by the way, just in case that applies to you. Um, I don't know, man. You know, I don't. I've really, I find all that kind of magic to just be sort of a like waste of. It's too many steps, right? There have now been experiments done by like Harvard scientists that have Sigma Phi ratings for their protocol, their scientific protocol, that have shown that our mind has the ability to change the trajectory of photons and to affect random number counters that run on quantum processes. So, you know, what do you need sigils for? What are you doing? Folding up paper and, you know, scribbling. I just, no, I don't buy it at all, you know. And I've heard stories about people, you know, the guy that wrote Spider-Man, the movie, the screenplay or something, talking about this, and he was very clearly mentally unstable, for one thing. But he was saying that he used sigils to try to attract a certain type of woman, and like 100 of them showed up, and they were all like messed up or whatever. And I'm saying if he had just had that intention without doing the sigil work, the same thing would have happened, you know. And I know that from experience. It's just too many steps, you know. And that's something I'm really, really opposed to is superstition, because it just really, you know, truth is self-substantiating, truth is light, and then there are shadows, and those are things that pass. And so I really try to work hard to convince people to let go of all these superstitious versions of magic, because there's nothing, the only tool you need is your consciousness, period. You don't need to sacrifice anything. You don't need blood. You don't need sigils. You don't need a motherfucking thing. All you need is your will. And if you don't do your personal work before you start trying to engage your will to have sort of preternatural effects on your experience, you're going to have a bad time, okay? So, you know, like you need to work out your demons first and realize that nothing's going anywhere. You know, the prima materia is transmutated. It's not evaporated. You know, you're not getting rid of anything. You're not getting rid of your darkness. You don't even want to. If you did, you would disappear. That's not the point. It's not even the point. You have to understand that the magician, man, I'm almost tempted to pull up this video I made about Crowley, because he says it so well, but it would take me forever to find it. It's not really reasonable. But he said something like real magic is just a person that has figured out how to use natural laws in a way that allow them to perform what appear to be miracles to the profane that don't understand what's going on or something. And that's where we get all this superstition, you know. But what I was saying is that an example of that is like entrainment, right? So when you constrain a demon to do your will, you know, the whole Congress with demons thing, you're actually just like taking greed and turning it into healthy ambition. You're not going to get rid of it, but you can transmute it into something that's maybe more productive and more useful. And you can have confidence that that demon is going to follow your orders because of the law of entrainment. These are the natural laws that Crowley was talking about. So you compel the thing that cycles at a lower speed to entrain with the thing at the higher speed. And when the magician says to the demon, "You are compelled by the Most High God," what he's saying is the laws of the universe dictate that you have no choice. That's really what it is, you know. It's not this hooba jooba nonsense. It really isn't. But it is also real, you know. The you know the people that accomplish the most in terms of like substantive art and things that transform cultures and epics, you know, they're always severely damaged. And it's this transmutation of that prima materia into the philosopher's stone that makes them what they are, you know? So that's the trick. The demon is compelled by the law of entrainment. You know, the magicians, this is why dogs listen to people, really. They're entrained with a higher cycle that they don't really have a choice. And of course, the more exposure there is, the more intense the entrainment is. How much do I got left for tonight? I don't know. How much you paying me? Seriously, guys, if you haven't hit the like button or become a patron, it's definitely cool to be a patron and support our mission. You can make one-time contributions through the addresses in the chat and in the descriptions. Do you know how to regain motivation? Yeah. I don't know if you're still there or not, but you gotta make it somehow on the dreams you still believe. uh, you have to have a connection with a sense of purpose. You know, that's the fundamental thing that is driving our society insane. You know, an analogy that I like to use is the Incas, actually, and they revered gold, right? They ate with bowls. They had bowls of gold. They used utensils made of gold. They wallpapered their temples with gold. Like they made animal effigies of gold, but they didn't worship it exactly, and they didn't give it any monetary value. They knew it was the sweat of the sun god entity, and that it had a connection to consciousness and life and stuff, and so they understood. The Catholics, on the other hand, just came and killed them all and took it because they also worship the sun, but they don't know it. Their sense of purpose has been extracted from their functionality, right? And so they just act like lunatics. That's why we call it a lunatic. You know, the moon, the symbol of the night, mystery, irrationality, animal, you know, all of those kind of levels. And the sun is the reason and the intellect, and right? So, yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that, you know. And if you lose connection with that sense of purpose, then you have to eat some mushrooms or something, and that helps. You know, I've been pretty badly beaten, you know, lately. I'm not broken, but I'm badly bent. You know, we had lots of years of struggle, and then we got on our feet, and then COVID took us out, and then we got back on our feet again, and then something else happened. You know, it's just been this constant up and down roller coaster thing. And then recently, we thought it was over because we'd gotten so far ahead and everything was so good, and then all of a sudden I needed surgeries, and we had to cancel events, and you know what I mean, all just it. And it just wore my soul out, you know, where I realized I was getting kind of listless, and like also looking at the level of indoctrination politically and otherwise in the United States, and the kind of monster that we're up against, and the odds of overcoming it and all this, you know what I mean? Like I was just kind of getting fried. And also my views had been going way up prior to all this, and then they just started plummeting again. I'm like, I'm not even really talking to anybody at this point, you know? So like, how do I rationalize even trying to do anything anymore, you know? And I drank some San Pedro and I went for a walk. And then I drank some San Pedro the next day and I went for a walk. And then I ate some mushrooms and played the guitar. And then I ate some more mushrooms and I played the guitar. And then I started to feel better. And I started to act right. So that's it, you know. You have to know what your purpose is and commit to it. I don't see how anyone can have any motivation, anyways. And even if you do have motivation, without that connection to a sense of purpose, you're just gonna the stuff you do is gonna bear no fruit. You know, no meaningful, substantive fruit. That's so weird that you would randomly ask me about Blue Oyster Cult. When I was a kid, my babysitter, her brother was the bass player when I was like 8 or something. Yeah, I mean, I like them. I guess it's not like something I listen to every day or something, but that song Godzilla is pretty badass. He picks up a bus and he throws it back down as he wades through the village towards the center of town. Godzilla, Godzilla, Godzilla. The guitar fills are actually some of the coolest in classic rock history, I think, actually. That guy, Butch or something was his name. Yeah, they're cool. I mean, I could go without not hearing "Don't Fear the Reaper" or whatever that rock and roll city song was or whatever, but they were cool. I don't know. I feel like somebody else asked something. Hold on. I think I'm getting a little bit tired because I kind of agreed with my new business partner that I wouldn't chew cocoa on streams because he thought it's a bad look. And I agree, but it's making it harder for me. I have a tiny bit, tonight, but it's making it a lot harder for me because we're at such a high elevation and like your blood's there's no oxygen in your blood and the cocoa puts it back, so it's not easy to comply with this. Uh, the guitarist amazing. United States is cooked. Yeah. Okay. So gold. He's asking about gold. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I would call it magical. It depends on what you mean by magical, But um, you know, things leave a bread trail. The signs, symbols, hints, and clues. Um, Writings on the wall. The rest is up to you. Uh, Gold comes from the collision of neutron stars, which is very rare, and they're only 115 yards across, and they're so dense that a spoonful weighs as much as Kilimanjaro. So they produce an awful lot of stuff when they collide, right? And the Incas, the Aztecs, the North American natives, a lot of them, the Babylonians, Syrians, alchemists, Egyptians. Nobody knows a lot about the Aborigines because I don't think they want to tell anybody anything. But all over the planet in ancient times, they knew that it came from stars. And so the fact that like people have this knowledge without having the ability to have direct gnosis, they don't have the ability to have observed this quantum process firsthand, but yet they obviously knew all over the planet. you know. And if you look at the legends and stuff, you kind of understand that they knew that there was a light consciousness gold connection, right? And now we know that the brain is loaded with gold. It's a superconductor that's activated by light, which probably helps the processing in the brain to occur so rapidly. Um, what else? If you drink colloidal gold, which is like tiny, tiny, tiny angstrom-sized particles in a suspension of water, it improves everything that your brain, deals with: cognition, memory, mood, all that stuff. Um, God, I feel like. And then light is emitted by neurons and entangled by photon pairs, and then the microtubules have been observed emitting photons as well. So the light connection is well established. Also, photons interact with gold in a way they interact with nothing else. So there's this pretty obvious connection here. And in fact, I've been working with AI to try to discover or pinpoint or elucidate or map even mathematically another layer of physics where there would be a sort of Fourier transform that translates concept to number, basically, would be a way to think about it. And gold and light are the materials that we're using to try to figure out how to establish this connection with like the Euler formula and Calabi-Yau 12-dimensional enfolded structures, where this layer of mind in the universe, this more subtle layer, is probably all crunched up and hidden in a 12-dimensional geometrical wad. Somebody says the U.S. is cooked. That's probably a fact. All right, I don't see any new questions or subjects. So don't forget, guys, we are doing events here. What month is it? February, this month, March, and probably the first 2 weeks of April in the Sacred Valley, with ayahuasca, bufo, psilocybin. I mean, not all at once or together, but these are options depending on the needs of the individual. Aya combo and, ruin exploration, drinking San Pedro and go to like the Ollantaytambo, the big Incan holy site, and definitely exciting. And then in May, we're going to the jungle, Manu, and I'm excited for that because I've had about enough of the elevation. So, if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. Flaming Lips are cool also. Yeah, I sometimes cover that song. Do you realize Soft Bulletin, The Spoonful Weighs a Ton is a reference to neutron stars. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot in that album. There's a lot. It's cool that you picked that up. Spoonful Weighs a Ton is definitely a reference to that stuff. What is the full name of that song? Something like the chemical for, like, the idea is that these two scientists like created the universe retroactively by mixing chemicals in a petri dish that made love, and I think that's like the basis for the concept album. Where they got their name from? Aleister Crowley quote: "Every mouth aflame to utter the unutterable name, the Flaming Lips." So they're into that stuff too. In fact, I had this really weird experience at a music festival called Bottle Rock in Sonoma County, where I was talking to this random lady about Crowley and the connection to the music and how so many of them were into it. And like, as I was talking to her, a golf cart drove by with the number 666 as it's like, some of them were like 324 or whatever, and that one was 666, and I was like, oh, that was odd. And then I go over to the Primus stage, and before the Primus show starts, they just flash a picture of Crowley, and then it goes bright white and disappears. And I was like, okay, that was weird. And then I go over to Cake, and Cake is singing a song I'd never heard before, where they say Satan is our motor coach or something, and I was like, what the hell, man? So then I go over to the Flaming Lips. I'd never heard them before, and I was like, there's no way these guys, these goofball ass weirdos, are. But from where I was standing, I could see the backstage, and there were inverted pentagrams painted on every single one of their amp cases. And I was like, holy shit, man, it's everyone. It's literally fucking everyone. And I'm not talking about Satanism. I want to be clear about that. It's not what it is. It's not anything that dumb. It's the inverted pentagram actually represents the descent of light into matter. And if you're Gnostic and you think that life is evil and that being alive is being trapped, then okay, it's an evil symbol. Otherwise, it's just a symbol of life happening. And when it's point up, it's the symbol of the redintegration of that light back into the source. So that's the symbol of death. Everything that people have been told is completely backwards. Inverted pentagram is a symbol of life. The right side up is a symbol of death. The end of the universe, really. The apocalypse. So, but yeah, what is that song? feeling your soul disintegrate. I really like that one a lot. I've only really listened to the Soft Bulletin. All right. 2.5 hours, and at this point, we're just talking about the flaming lips and stuff, which is great, but I'm tired and hungry. Um, so I appreciate all you guys for being here. I hope that there was, value gotten tonight, and if so, I hope you will consider supporting us in one form or another, because we certainly could use the support and definitely appreciate it. And I feel like if we're able to just get over this hurdle, we can really do something. And join our Discord. It's become kind of a community where people are developing friendships. There are projects that are happening. Um, so join the Discord, the Patreon. You get access to a bunch of premium material going back 6 years, and then also our private chats and secret streams once a week. So thank you guys so much, and good